The first warning, a fragile patience. The Galactic Council chamber was abuzz with quiet murmurings as the representative from Earth, Ambassador Elena Ward, calmly took her place at the podium. Her presence was unassuming, yet her piercing gaze seemed to silence the faint whispers that echoed through the crystalline halls. Standing among the towering forms of alien dignitaries, some with bioluminescent tendrils, others with metallic shells, Elena was small, but she carried herself with the poise of someone accustomed to being underestimated. The discussion on mining rights for the Proxima Expanse was underway. The Expanse had long been a contested region, abundant with precious resources critical for interstellar travel. For decades, Earth had operated small, sustainable mining colonies there, abiding by every regulation set forth by the Council. But today's session took a sharp turn. The Proxima Expanse is hereby declared an exclusive zone for the Zentari Trade Alliance, boomed the Council President, his mandibles clicking in satisfaction. His announcement sent ripples of surprise through the chamber, but none as pronounced as the wave of silent fury that passed through Elena's expression. Still, she smiled, a controlled, deliberate smile that only a keen observer would recognize as a mask. Honorable Council, she began, her voice calm but carrying an edge of steel, the Human Federation has faithfully adhered to all Council regulations for 50 years. Our colonies in the Proxima Expanse are legally registered and compliant with every directive. On what grounds is this decision being made? Clerical oversights, replied the Council President dismissively. Human documentation used terrestrial time stamps rather than galactic standard. A regrettable but invalidating error. The room erupted in quiet snickers. Elena's fingers tightened around the edges of her data tablet, but her composure didn't waver. Instead, she nodded, tapped a few keys on her device, and spoke evenly. The Human Federation notes this decision and will review its implications. We trust the Council archives will retain a detailed record of today's proceedings. She stepped down from the podium with an air of restrained dignity. As she returned to her seat, her aide whispered, "That's it? We're just going to let this slide?" Elena gave a tight smile. For now. Back on Earth, in the sprawling Human Federation headquarters, a storm of frustration erupted during the debriefing. Generals, economists, and diplomats crowded the room, debating how to respond to the Council's blatant theft of Earth's assets. Admiral Jonah Hayes, a grizzled veteran with an unyielding demeanor, slammed his fist on the table. This isn't the first time, and it won't be the last. They're testing us, seeing how far they can push before we push back. Elena, seated at the head of the table, remained calm. And what would you have us do, Admiral? Declare war on a council with 100 allied species? Humanity isn't ready for that. No, but we're not defenseless either, Jonah shot back. Our fleet may not match theirs in numbers, but we've spent decades preparing for this exact scenario. Let me remind you, patience doesn't mean passivity. Elena nodded slowly. You're right. But patience, Admiral, is also a strategy. Let them think we're weak. Let them believe we're a species of diplomats too timid to act. The more they underestimate us, the less prepared they'll be when we finally respond. Weeks later, the Council delivered another affront. 6 major trade routes that ran through human-controlled space were reclassified as highly restricted military corridors. Human merchant ships were forced to detour through Zentari space, incurring massive fees. The financial strain was devastating, threatening to cripple the economies of several human colonies. Elena once again stood before the Council, her expression unreadable as the Zentari delegate smirked at her from across the room. Honorable Council, she said, this decision significantly disrupts the livelihoods of billions within the Human Federation. Were we not consulted about such a decision? The Zentari delegate, a creature with gleaming chitin plates, leaned forward, his voice dripping with condescension. Security concerns necessitate this reclassification. Surely, Ambassador, you understand the need for order in these troubled times. Elena's calm exterior faltered for just a fraction of a second. The Human Federation notes this decision as well, she replied coolly. However, we caution the Council against underestimating the resilience of its member species. The remark earned a few chuckles, but Elena didn't care. She left the chamber with her head held high, though her mind raced with frustration. How many slights could humanity endure before the cracks in their patience widened into something more dangerous? Back on Earth, whispers of defiance grew louder. Underground bunkers buzzed with activity as scientists unveiled technologies long kept hidden from the galaxy. Weapons systems, propulsion advancements, and experimental defensive measures, all developed in secret under a protocol known only to Earth's highest officials, Paperclip. Elena stood alongside Admiral Hayes as a massive starship, sleek and bristling with advanced weaponry, was revealed in an underground hangar. The Admiral crossed his arms, satisfaction gleaming in his eyes. "This is just one of them," he said. 30 more are ready, each more advanced than anything the Council has seen. Elena's expression remained cautious. "They'll see them soon enough, Admiral. But not yet. Patience remains our strongest weapon. Let them make the next move." As humanity prepared for an uncertain future, one thing became clear: their patience was not infinite. Behind every diplomatic smile, every bowed head, and every quietly accepted insult, a storm brewed, one the galaxy would soon have no choice but to reckon with. The spark before the storm. Months after the trade route reclassification, the Human Federation found itself grappling with yet another blow. The Terraform Approval Board denied expansion rights for 3 human colonies struggling with overpopulation. At the same time, luxury resorts for the wealthier Council species were approved on 12 bordering worlds. The hypocrisy was glaring, but the Council dismissed it as routine prioritization. For the humans, however, it was a breaking point. Ambassador Elena Ward returned to the Council chambers, her measured steps echoing in the vast hall. She stood at the podium, her usual composed demeanor intact. "Honorable Council," she began, her voice steady but with a trace of steel beneath the surface, "these colonies represent the hopes of millions. Their survival depends on expansion, and yet this body has prioritized leisure over necessity. How does the Council justify this decision?" The response was as dismissive as ever. The Zentari delegate sneered, mandibles twitching. "The approval process is impartial, Ambassador. Your colonies failed to meet the necessary standards. This is simply a matter of merit." Elena nodded, her expression unreadable. The Human Federation notes this decision and ensures that the sequence of events leading to this outcome will be thoroughly documented. As she returned to her seat, her aide leaned in and whispered, "They're laughing at us, Ambassador." "They won't be laughing forever," Elena replied quietly. Far from the Council chambers, the frustration of humanity simmered. The colonies affected by the decision were overwhelmed, their populations packed into overcrowded habitats. Protests erupted on Earth and its colonies, with citizens demanding action. Humanity had played the part of the obedient member species for decades, but patience was wearing thin. Quietly, plans that had been in the works for years began to take shape. Deep within the Human Federation's secret military installations, Admiral Jonah Hayes oversaw preparations for what he called the contingency. His engineers worked tirelessly on ships, weapons, and technologies that had been hidden from the galaxy's prying eyes. These weren't the clunky, utilitarian ships humanity had shown the Council. These were sleek, powerful vessels equipped with weapons that defied conventional understanding. They had been developed not for conquest, but for the possibility of survival in a galaxy that seemed determined to test humanity's limits. Elena visited one such facility, walking through rows of shimmering starships. Hayes joined her, his expression grim but resolute. "They keep pushing," he said. "How long do we wait before we push back?" Elena stopped in front of a massive flagship, its hull gleaming under the harsh lights. "Not yet," she said. "Patience is a weapon, Admiral. It keeps them blind to what we're capable of. But when the time comes, we'll be ready." Back at the council, tensions continued to rise. The Centauri and their allies grew bolder, making veiled threats and pushing policies that undermined humanity at every turn. Yet, Elena maintained her calm facade. She took notes at every meeting, logged every insult and slight, and ensured that humanity's grievances were meticulously recorded. Behind her quiet exterior, she was building a case, a paper trail of the council's corruption and abuse. It was during a particularly contentious session that Elena's patience was tested once more. The Centauri delegate, emboldened by the council's inaction, openly mocked her. "Ambassador Ward, I must commend your people. Such remarkable tolerance. Or is it cowardice?" The chamber erupted in laughter, but Elena's gaze never wavered. She stood and faced the council, her voice calm but cutting. "Tolerance is not cowardice, delegate. It is a choice. One that requires strength. But let me offer a word of caution. There is a limit to all things, including patience." The laughter faltered. Elena's words lingered in the air, an unspoken warning that even the most dismissive of council members couldn't ignore. Still, they brushed it off as another empty threat from a weak species. As the session ended, Elena returned to her quarters, exhaustion etched into her features. She poured herself a drink and stared out at the stars beyond her window. Humanity had given the galaxy every chance to treat them as equals, to build a future based on mutual respect. But the Council's arrogance had left little room for hope. She knew it wouldn't be long before diplomacy reached its breaking point. On Earth, the preparations continued. Fleet commanders reviewed simulations, engineers fine-tuned experimental technologies, and scientists worked around the clock to perfect weapons that could turn the tide of any conflict. The Federation's leaders hoped it wouldn't come to war, but they were ready to ensure that if it did, humanity would not be caught unprepared. The spark that would ignite the storm was growing brighter. Humanity's patience, once seen as an infinite well, was running dry. The galaxy continued to poke the bear, unaware of the dragon that lay beneath its surface. Soon, they would learn what it meant to push too far. The breaking point. The final insult came like a hammer blow. The research vessel Stellar Horizon, an unarmed ship carrying a mix of scientists, educators, and children participating in the Young Explorers program, was conducting its studies along a council-approved corridor. Its mission was simple: gather data on quantum anomalies in deep space. Yet, the Centauri patrol, ignoring all protocols and pleas for verification, intercepted the ship. The transmission logs were chilling. Captain Mira Chen of the Stellar Horizon remained calm as Centauri warships surrounded her vessel. "This is the Stellar Horizon," her voice echoed, steady and professional. "We are a civilian research vessel operating in approved space. There must be some mistake." The Centauri captain's reply was cold. "You are in restricted space. Power down and prepare for inspection." Myra's voice took on a sharper edge. "We are in compliance with all council directives. Please confirm your orders with Central Command." The reply never came. Instead, the first volley of plasma fire struck the Stellar Horizon. Chaos ensued as the unarmed ship attempted to broadcast distress signals while the Centauri patrol ships methodically tore it apart. Among the logs were the faint voices of children, their excitement and curiosity turning to panic as the ship's hull was breached. Then, silence. The Council classified it as an unfortunate misunderstanding, blaming navigational errors on the human vessel's part. The Centauri delegate, with no remorse, labeled the incident as regrettable but unavoidable. To humanity, it was the single most unforgivable act in their history. The recording of the incident reached Earth within hours, played in every corner of human-controlled space. Footage of children laughing in zero gravity, conducting experiments, and singing an old Earth song about stars was spliced with the cold, clinical destruction of their vessel. Humanity watched in stunned silence as the Council dismissed their outrage with bureaucratic apathy. In the Council chamber, Ambassador Elena Ward stood before her peers, her expression betraying none of the storm within her. Honorable Council, she began, her voice devoid of its usual warmth, the Human Federation demands a full investigation into the events surrounding the destruction of the stellar horizon. We demand accountability for the deaths of 27 civilians, including 8 children. The Centauri delegate smirked, his mandibles clicking with amusement. The Council has reviewed the incident thoroughly. The loss is unfortunate, but the human vessel was in restricted space. The Centauri patrol acted within their mandate. Elena's composure cracked, just for a moment. Her hand tightened around the edge of the podium, and her voice grew colder. Unfortunate? You call the deaths of children unfortunate? The Council President raised a hand to silence her. Ambassador, please. The matter is closed. Let us not waste further time. Elena stood frozen, her knuckles white against the podium. Slowly, she straightened and addressed the chamber with a chilling calm. The Human Federation notes this decision, she said, her voice devoid of emotion. And we will ensure that history notes it as well. She walked out of the chamber without another word, leaving an uneasy silence in her wake. Back on Earth, the response was immediate. Protests erupted on every colony, demanding action. For decades, humanity had tolerated the Council's arrogance, endured their slights, and turned the other cheek. But the massacre of children was a line no species could cross without consequences. In the Federation's war rooms, Admiral Jonah Hayes addressed a gathering of humanity's top military and political leaders. The Council has made its position clear, he said, his voice steady and unwavering. They believe we are weak, incapable of defending ourselves. It's time to show them just how wrong they are. Elena joined the meeting, her usual calm replaced by a simmering resolve. Diplomacy has failed, she said bluntly. But let me be clear, this is not about vengeance. It's about ensuring that no human child ever faces such a fate again. The room erupted into activity. Plans were set in motion, fleets mobilized, and the Federation's hidden arsenal was unveiled. The stellar horizon's destruction became a rallying cry, uniting humanity in a way no previous threat ever had. The Council, still basking in their perceived superiority, remained oblivious. They saw the protests, the diplomatic reprimands, and the calls for justice as mere noise. They failed to notice the ships disappearing from human spaceports or the encrypted transmissions that buzzed between human colonies. Humanity's patience was gone. The breaking point had been reached, and the galaxy would soon learn what lay behind the quiet smiles and polite restraint of the species they had so grievously underestimated. Humanity unleashed. The Council chamber was quieter than usual when Ambassador Elena Ward entered. The news of the Stellar Horizon massacre still rippled across the galaxy. Many species viewed the Centauri's actions with unease, but fear of challenging the Council's dominant factions kept them silent. The chamber felt heavier, the tension palpable, as Elena stepped to the podium once again. Her presence was different this time. Gone was the diplomat with the measured words and polite smiles. Her voice, when she spoke, was calm but carried an undercurrent of cold steel that silenced every murmur in the room. Honorable Council, she began, her tone deliberate and sharp, the Human Federation has reviewed the Council's handling of the Stellar Horizon tragedy. We find it lacking. There has been no accountability, no investigation, and no justice for the lives lost. Let me remind you that among those lost were children. Children who believed in this Council's promise of unity and peace. A few delegates shifted uncomfortably in their seats, but the Centauri representative remained unmoved, his mandibles clicking in disdain. Ambassador Ward, the Council has already ruled on this matter. Your continued protests are becoming tiresome. Elena's gaze locked onto the Centauri delegate, her eyes cold. Tiresome? No, delegate. What is tiresome is humanity's patience with this Council's arrogance. We have endured decades of slights, theft, and injustice. We have watched as this body prioritized greed over fairness, oppression over equality. But let me assure you, our patience has limits. The Centauri delegate laughed, a harsh and mocking sound that echoed through the chamber. And what will humanity do, Ambassador? Write another report? Deliver another speech? You are but one species among many, and an insignificant one at that. Elena remained silent for a moment, letting the laughter die down. Then she spoke, her voice colder than ever. You mistake our silence for submission. Our restraint for weakness. You believe we are insignificant because we have allowed you to think so. But you will soon learn the truth. Humanity does not forget. And we do not forgive. With that, she turned and left the chamber, her footsteps echoing in the silence she left behind. Back on Earth, the gears of humanity's retaliation were already turning. The Paperclip Protocol, a decades-long contingency plan, was finally activated. Fleet Admiral Jonah Hayes stood on the bridge of the Resolute Dawn, humanity's flagship, as hundreds of vessels assembled in high orbit. The fleet was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen, sleek, angular warships bristling with advanced weaponry that had been hidden from view for decades. Admiral Hayes addressed the gathered crew over the intercom, his voice steady and resolute. For years, we have endured their arrogance. We have accepted their mockery and tolerated their theft. But today, we make a stand. Today, we remind the galaxy that humanity is not weak. We are not prey. We are a force to be reckoned with. The fleet began its journey to the Council's central system, a display of power and precision that sent shockwaves through the galaxy. Every human colony, every ship, every citizen watched the live feeds as humanity's fleet emerged from the shadows. Meanwhile, the Council scrambled to make sense of what was happening. Reports flooded in of human warships appearing in disputed territories, dismantling Centauri patrols with ruthless efficiency. The Council convened an emergency session, but their usual bluster and arrogance were tempered by an undeniable undercurrent of fear. When the fleet arrived in orbit around the Council's capital, their presence was impossible to ignore. Hundreds of human ships surrounded the planet, their sleek designs and advanced weaponry a stark contrast to the clunky vessels the Council had come to expect from humanity. Admiral Hayes transmitted a single message to the Council. We have come to discuss your failure to uphold justice and equality. You will listen. In the chamber, panic spread among the delegates as the message played. The Centauri delegate stood, his voice trembling with anger. This is an act of war. Humanity has overstepped its bounds and will be dealt with accordingly. As if on cue, the live feed switched to a view of a Centauri warship attempting to engage one of the human vessels. The human ship fired a single shot, a weapon the Council had never seen before. The Centauri warship didn't explode, it simply ceased to exist, its atoms disassembling in a way that defied comprehension. Admiral Hayes's voice followed, calm and commanding. This is not an act of war. This is a demonstration. For too long, you have dismissed us. For too long, you have mistaken our patience for weakness. That ends today. We demand justice for the stellar horizon. We demand accountability for decades of exploitation. And we demand a reformation of this Council to reflect true equality among all species. The Council was stunned into silence, their arrogance shattered. The Centauri delegate sputtered, "You cannot dictate terms to the Council." Elena Ward, who had remained silent during the broadcast, finally spoke. Her words were quiet but cut through the room like a blade. We are not dictating. We are ensuring. The era of exploitation is over. You will either adapt, or you will be replaced. As humanity's fleet held position, the galaxy watched, waiting to see how the Council would respond. For the first time, humanity had shown its true strength, and the galaxy trembled in its wake. The turning tide. The Council chamber was a storm of chaos and panic. The holographic feeds from the Centauri fleet's obliteration left delegates frozen in their seats. Humanity's ships, sleek and unyielding, had turned one of the Council's most vaunted armadas into dust with minimal effort. The power disparity was undeniable, and the truth hit hard: they had underestimated humanity in every conceivable way. Elena Ward stood at the edge of the chamber, watching the council unravel. She didn't speak, letting the weight of humanity's response hang over them like a storm cloud. Finally, the council president banged his gavel, demanding order. "We cannot allow one species to disrupt the balance of the galaxy," the Centauri delegate shouted, his usual arrogance now tinged with fear. "This is an affront to the very foundation of the council." Elena stepped forward, her calm demeanor as unnerving as ever. "An affront? Let me remind you what the true affront was: the massacre of innocent civilians aboard the Stellar Horizon. Children died, delegate. And you dismissed it as a navigational error." She paused, letting her words settle like a cold wind. "Humanity came here seeking justice, only to find greed and corruption. You ignored our patience, exploited our restraint, and mocked our willingness to work within the system. And now, when faced with the consequences of your actions, you call it an affront?" The council president, a towering insectoid with translucent wings, attempted to regain control. "Ambassador Ward, humanity's response has been disproportionate. We must find a path back to diplomacy." Elena's gaze hardened. "Diplomacy? After decades of theft, mockery, and the murder of our children, you want diplomacy?" Her voice dropped to a deadly calm. "No, President. What humanity wants is accountability." Above the council's capital, Admiral Jonah Hayes coordinated his fleet with surgical precision. Human warships maintained a steady orbit, their weapons systems trained but silent, a show of power that needed no further demonstration. The galaxy watched in stunned silence as broadcasts from the council chambers were transmitted across thousands of systems. In the streets below, a new reality began to take hold. Citizens of various species, once complacent under the council's rule, started to question the order they had accepted for so long. The sight of humanity standing tall against the council's might inspired a spark of rebellion. Messages of solidarity began flooding human channels, from species that had been quietly suffering under the same oppressive system. Inside the council chamber, the Centauri delegate refused to relent. "You believe you can threaten the council into submission? You are one species against hundreds." Elena's lips curved into a faint, humorless smile. "You still don't understand, do you? Humanity doesn't stand alone. We've endured because we believed in the strength of unity, in the promise of this council. That belief is gone, but our capacity to unite hasn't changed. The only difference is that we're no longer waiting for your approval to act." The chamber doors swung open, and a stream of holographic projections filled the space, each representing a species that had decided to back humanity's stand. The Aelari, a once prosperous species that had been sidelined by council politics, spoke first. "The Human Federation has our support. They are right, this council is broken." Others followed, hesitant at first, but gaining confidence with each declaration. The Zeraki, the Velner, even the timid Lyrixians, all voiced their agreement. A chorus of dissent against the council's status quo began to build, shaking the foundation of the once mighty body. The council president's voice wavered as he tried to regain control. "This is a coup. This is anarchy. Do you understand what you are doing?" Elena's voice was steady, her calm cutting through the noise. "What we are doing is ensuring that no species, human or otherwise, suffers under this council's negligence again. The galaxy deserves better. Humanity demands better. And we will not stop until this council is reformed." Admiral Hayes's voice came over the chamber's speakers, firm and unyielding. "You have two options: step down peacefully and allow for reformation, or continue to resist and face the consequences of your hubris. Humanity is prepared for either outcome." The council delegates looked to one another, their once unshakable confidence eroded. Even the Centauri delegate, whose species had long been the council's enforcers, faltered under the weight of humanity's resolve. Slowly, the president lowered his gavel, signaling a reluctant acknowledgement of the inevitable. This council will convene an emergency session to discuss reformation, he said, his voice trembling with defeat. Elena stepped forward, her presence commanding the room. Good. But understand this, humanity's patience has run out. If you think for a moment that you can delay or manipulate this process, you will find our response far less forgiving. She turned and walked out of the chamber, leaving a stunned silence in her wake. Behind her, the galaxy began to shift, the tides of power moving in ways no one could have foreseen. Humanity, once seen as insignificant, had reshaped the course of history. Above the planet, the human fleet held its position, a silent reminder of the strength that had lain dormant for too long. The message was clear: the galaxy would never underestimate humanity again. A galaxy reborn. The council chamber was subdued, its usual grandeur dimmed by the weight of what had transpired. Delegates who once boasted of their species' supremacy now sat in uneasy silence, watching as the framework of their authority unraveled before their eyes. The galaxy was changing, and humanity had become the fulcrum upon which that change turned. Ambassador Elena Ward stood at the center of the chamber, flanked by holographic projections of the newly formed alliance of equal species. These were the races that had thrown their support behind humanity, tired of the Council's oppression and eager for a new order. The alliance was a symbol of hope, but it was also a warning to those who sought to cling to the old ways. The Human Federation acknowledges this Council's willingness to discuss reform, Elena began, her voice steady and resolute. But discussion is no longer enough. Concrete steps must be taken to dismantle the systems of exploitation and corruption that have plagued this body for far too long. The Centauri delegate, still defiant, rose to his feet. You cannot demand the dismantling of a system that has brought order to the galaxy for centuries. You risk plunging us all into chaos. Elena turned her gaze to him, her expression calm but unyielding. Order built on oppression is no order at all. What you call chaos, we call freedom. Her words resonated across the chamber. Delegates from smaller, marginalized species nodded in agreement. They had suffered under the Council's policies, their voices drowned out by the powerful factions that prioritized profit and control over fairness. Admiral Jonah Hayes watched from orbit, his fleet holding its position as a silent but potent reminder of humanity's strength. From his vantage point, he observed the planet below, where demonstrations were unfolding. Citizens of various species marched in solidarity with humanity's demands, their voices rising in defiance of the Council's authority. It's working, Hayes murmured to his command staff. The galaxy is waking up. On the ground, Elena continued to outline the demands of the alliance. First, the immediate resignation of the current Council leadership. Second, the establishment of a reformed body that ensures equal representation for all member species, regardless of their size or influence. Third, the creation of an independent tribunal to investigate and prosecute past abuses of power. The Council President, his once imposing presence diminished, hesitated before responding. These demands, they are unprecedented. So was the massacre of children aboard the Stellar Horizon, Elena countered sharply. Unprecedented actions require unprecedented consequences. The tension in the room was palpable. The Centauri delegate looked ready to erupt, but a warning glance from another council member silenced him. The tide was turning, and even the most stubborn factions couldn't ignore the growing calls for reform. The president sighed, his antennae drooping in resignation. Very well. The council agrees to your terms. But know this, the road ahead will not be easy. Humanity has never chosen the easy road, Elena replied. We've chosen the right one. As the session ended, the council's surrender was broadcast across the galaxy. The image of Elena Ward standing tall in the chamber, flanked by allies, became a symbol of resistance and hope. Across thousands of systems, citizens celebrated the end of an era of exploitation and the dawn of something new. But humanity's work was far from over. Back on Earth, plans were already in motion to ensure the transition to the new council went smoothly. Scientists, engineers, and diplomats worked tirelessly to share their advancements with their new allies, strengthening bonds that had been forged in the fires of conflict. Admiral Hayes met with Elena in a secure communication channel. "The fleet remains on high alert," he informed her. "The Centauri might not take this loss quietly." "They won't," Elena agreed. "But we're ready for them. And this time, we're not standing alone." The alliance of equal species began to take shape, its members united by a shared commitment to justice and equality. Joint military exercises were conducted, trade agreements renegotiated, and educational exchanges established. The galaxy, once fragmented by greed and division, started to rebuild itself into something stronger. Elena stood on the observation deck of a human starship, watching as Earth's moon reflected the light of the sun. Behind her, a holographic map displayed the galaxy, with new alliance outposts spreading across the stars. "We've started something they can't stop," she said quietly. "But this isn't just about humanity anymore. It's about everyone." Hayes joined her, his posture as solid and unyielding as ever. "They underestimated us because they didn't understand what we were capable of. Now they do." Elena nodded. "Let's make sure they never forget." As the human fleet and their allies prepared for the challenges ahead, the galaxy held its breath. The Council's fall was just the beginning. What came next would define an era. Humanity, no longer content to remain in the shadows, had stepped into the light, bringing with them the promise of a better future for all. The galaxy would never be the same. A legacy forged in stars. The galaxy had entered a new era. The once mighty Galactic Council, the symbol of centuries of dominance and corruption, had been restructured under the watchful eye of humanity and its allies in the newly formed alliance of equal species. What had once been a distant dream of justice and equality was now a reality, but the work was far from over. Ambassador Elena Ward stood at the podium in what was now called the Unity Chamber, the central seat of the Reformed Council. The crystalline walls gleamed brighter, their reflections symbolizing the transparency and equality humanity had demanded. Around her, delegates from hundreds of species sat together as equals, their differences no longer tools for division but strengths to be celebrated. "This is not a victory for humanity alone," Elena began, her voice firm but warm. "This is a victory for every species that has suffered under the weight of injustice. It is a testament to what we can achieve when we come together, not as conquerors, not as rivals, but as partners in building a better future." The chamber erupted into applause, a sound that had rarely graced the halls of the old council. The delegates, many of whom had fought for this change alongside humanity, now carried the torch of unity forward. For the first time in generations, hope filled the air. Above the planet, the human fleet held its position, not as a threat but as a reminder of the price of peace. Admiral Jonah Hayes stood on the bridge of the Resolute Dawn, watching as ships from allied species joined in coordinated patrols. The Alliance Navy was taking shape, a collective force that symbolized the strength of unity. "We've come a long way," Hayes said to his staff, his grizzled features softening with a rare smile. "But this is just the beginning. The galaxy's watching, and we need to show them that this isn't just about power, it's about purpose." On Earth, the ripple effects of the Reformation were felt deeply. Scientists shared humanity's advancements with their allies, teaching them about the technologies that had been hidden for decades. Joint research projects flourished, with breakthroughs in medicine, energy, and space exploration benefiting every member of the alliance. In the streets, celebrations continued. Humanity, once dismissed as weak and insignificant, now stood as a beacon of resilience and ingenuity. The story of the stellar horizon had become a universal tale, a reminder of what was lost and a call to protect the innocent at all costs. Across the galaxy, murals and memorials honored the children who had perished, their legacy serving as a foundation for the future. Elena found a moment of quiet reflection aboard a shuttle returning to Earth. The weight of the past years hung heavy on her shoulders, but so did the knowledge that humanity had made its mark on the galaxy, not through conquest, but through perseverance. Her aide, a young diplomat from the Lyrixian species, interrupted her thoughts. "Ambassador, there's a message from the Unity Chamber. They're requesting your presence to discuss the next phase of governance reforms." Elena nodded, a faint smile playing on her lips. "There's always a next phase, isn't there?" The aide hesitated before adding, "Ambassador, I just wanted to say, none of this would have been possible without you. Without humanity." Elena's smile widened. It wasn't just humanity. It was all of us who dared to believe in something better. Meanwhile, on the edges of known space, the remnants of the Zentari fleet licked their wounds, plotting their return. Though diminished, their hatred for humanity burned bright. The Alliance was prepared for this. New outposts were established in key regions, and intelligence networks worked tirelessly to root out signs of rebellion. Admiral Hayes, ever vigilant, oversaw these efforts. "We've won a battle, not the war," he reminded his officers. "But we'll fight for this peace as fiercely as we fought for our survival." The Alliance continued to grow, with new species joining its ranks. What had begun as a stand against tyranny evolved into a movement that reshaped the galaxy. Trade routes reopened under fairer terms, scientific knowledge was shared freely, and for the first time in centuries, species once divided by fear and greed worked side by side. In the Unity Chamber, Elena stood once more to address the delegates. "Let us not forget the lessons of the past," she said, her voice echoing with conviction. "Patience is not weakness. Restraint is not surrender. And unity is not a luxury, it is a necessity. Together, we have proven that the galaxy is strongest when we rise together, not against one another." As she stepped away from the podium, the chamber erupted into applause once more. Humanity's role in this new era was cemented, not as rulers but as equals. The galaxy had learned that behind humanity's patience lay unmatched strength, but also an unyielding commitment to justice. The stars above seemed brighter, their light reflecting the hope of a galaxy reborn. Humanity's legacy would not be one of conquest or domination but of resilience, ingenuity, and the power of unity. As the first chapter of this new era came to a close, the future stretched out before them, as limitless as the cosmos itself.